So at this point, we can trigger our workflow. So let's do that now. Let's go into our application. We can either run it here within the app designer, or of course, we can run it within our Launchpad. So let's open our Launchpad, and we can see we haven't actually assigned the application to the tile yet. So let's jump into the tile group, head to our main apps group. Here within the tiles, we have our field worker inspect tile, and within the action, we'll edit and we can add this field worker inspection portal application. Now, whilst we're here, we can set up the workflow inbox too. So let's cancel out of those groups and we'll open into our manager apps group. Now here we have our two tiles for our workflow inbox and our analytical application. So let's jump into the workflow inbox tile. We'll go into the action tab, and here we can give it the workflow inbox which we downloaded. So the Planet 9 inbox F3v2. Also, within the general tab here, we can change the type of tile from default to application, which gives it this additional selection box where you can run this application inside of the tile or on top of the tile. So for this, we'll select the Planet 9 inbox tile application as it is designed to run in this general tab. So we can save that, display, and close out. Now if we refresh our Launchpad, we'll see that we have our application assigned here, and you'll notice that now this tile is running the workflow inbox tile application on top here, and we can see that we have 0 workflow items pending inside. So let's open our field worker inspection portal app, and we'll see we actually have an error, which is Quagga is not defined. Now this is a very simple one to fix, and this is simply because within our application we have some headers set which are providing the libraries and the logic for our barcode scanning, for our signature pad, and for our mapping. Now these are running at an app level, but to get our app using these libraries within our Launchpad, we need to include them in our Launchpad header as well. So we can simply copy from here, head to our Launchpad header, jump into edit mode, paste them in, save, display, and that's it. We can refresh now, and we should be able to open our field worker inspection portal app with no problem at all. Perfect. So let's jump into this inspection and let's populate these details. So now all that inspection data is complete. Let's open our network log, submit the inspection, and here we can see that it started the workflow successfully. However, we have not exited back out to the main page, which means we probably have an error waiting for us in the console. We do. Let's see. Draft data is not defined. Let's have a look here. This is referring to this variable, and that's simply because when we copied and pasted our where clause here within our application, we copied it from the save partial inspection and navigate function. We didn't change around this draft data variable, so actually it's the inspection data is what we'll want to pass through back via this API. So we can simply change this around, save, activate, and let's refresh our Launchpad and try one more time. So here we can jump back into our inspection. Let's sign off one more time. Ready to submit. Let's submit, and now we can see the workflow has triggered successfully, and we've updated the inspection with our request body, which includes the status as submitted, and with that in place, we can now see the status has updated automatically for this inspection. If we try and go back into it, our logic will say this inspection now can't be changed. So let's go have a look at our workflow overview tool. So we can just search for workflow, and if we come into the overview, here you can see essentially the same inbox which we've just set up on our Launchpad. So here now within the workflow inbox we'll have one workflow item, and we can tell that that one is there, and that's because of our workflow inbox tile application running on top of the tile. And then within the tile itself we have our one workflow item. So when we look in the workflow inbox here, we can see our one inspection approval workflow for our wind turbine. There's the object key as the part number, and here we can click on this button and we can see the contents of the workflow. And in this case it's useful to look at the log. You can see that we started the workflow, we've started a user task, and we've determined using this strategy who it should be assigned to. And in this case we can see it is assigned to the admin based on the manager's strategy. So we can see the workflow item here, and we can interact with it here as well. We can choose to delete the workflow if we don't want it anymore, or within the workflow we have the ability to do all of the main actions, so to approve and reject, as well as being able to forward it on to someone else. If we jump back into the Launchpad, we can click on this group, and then we can see the workflow within this group. And here we can see we've passed the equipment name through, so that comes through here, and we can see the part number as well coming through here. Since we've attached both the approve and reject actions to our user task, we can see both of those within the workflow inbox application here. Now at this point it's useful to show more information in this section here, in this document section. Here we can see the log, but our document is currently empty. And that's because within our workflow, within our user task, we have not yet set the inbox application. And this application runs inside of this space here. So let's set that up now, and we'll set it up to show the details captured in the inspection. So the barcode that's been scanned, the comments that have been left, the picture that's been uploaded, and the signature which has been provided. So let's open the app designer and get going. We'll create a new application, and let's not use any templates here, so we can start with a completely blank application. Now, since this app will always be running inside of a Launchpad, we can utilize a JavaScript file, put it in our resource, and if we write out if sap.n, this if will trigger if we're running inside of a Launchpad. Within this if, we can write the following: sap.n.shell, so we'll utilize the shell of the Launchpad with its attach init function. And within this function, we'll want to pass data. Within this, we'll have an object, and within this object is where we can write our logic. So to understand what's happening here, let's just console log initially. And we'll just console log data. So now with this app, we can assign it within our user task. So if we edit our workflow, and here in our inbox application, let's pick our embedded app. We can save and display. One thing to note here, if you exit out of your workflow and you open it up again, if you're missing any details here, simply restart your instance to fix the problem. So to restart is as simple as going to the system settings and hitting the restart button in the top right. But with the workflow inbox application successfully in place, we can come back to our Launchpad and refresh. If we open the workflow inbox, we jump back into our inspection here. Now we can see this is being printed, our workflow data in the app, and here is all the data being passed through from our workflow list item. In this case, we're particularly interested in the object key, which we're passing through, and you can see that just here. So we're going to utilize this object key, and we're going to make an API call to our inspection table to pull through the details from this inspection. So to do this, we'll go back into the app designer, and we need to set up our API call to our inspections table. So we'll grab our API component, we'll point it to our inspections table with our get operation. We can call this our inspection get API, and then of course we can use the code snippets to quickly put that API in place. We're going to utilize the where clause here, as we'll want to select only the inspection where the part number is the data.object key. But not only this, we'll also want the status to be submitted, as once you've rejected a inspection, for example, there'll still be a copy of the inspection in the database just with the status of rejected. So we'll always be looking for the submitted inspection, as there'll only ever be one of those. We can of course have a look at our table browser where we can see that submitted inspection. So separating these two with a comma will ensure that we pull in only the one where the part number is the object key and the status is submitted. We will want to stringify this, so json.stringify, and then we wrap our object in our brackets there, and that's it for now. Next, we're going to add a simple form straight into our document parent component here. You don't have to use a shell, an app, and a page if you're making an embedded application like this. So let's set the model source here to the inspections definition. And then we can use the wizard to generate our simple form automatically. So we don't want to show the ID or any of these parameters. However, it's good to show obviously our inspection details, so we'll keep all those in the middle, and we can hit create. Now let's see how this looks within our workflow inbox here. We open up our inspection and we can see our simple form has begun to generate here, but none of the data is showing yet. So let's diagnose this problem. Why is this not working? Well, the best way of going about this would be to print the response from our API. So within our Ajax success, let's look at the data which is being sent to our simple form. So we'll do a console.log .get data, but of course we want to get the data from the underlying model. So now with this in place, let's refresh, jump back into the workflow inbox and open up the workflow item. And now here we can see we've printed the simple form model, and you can see it's printing as an array. So that's why our bindings aren't working, because a simple form expects a flat response, so just a single object. However, we've given it an array with one object in, so those bindings aren't going to work automatically. So why is this happening? Well, within our API designer, if we come into the inspections API and then we look at the operations under our get operation and then under the response tab, we can see the response is set to come through as an array. Now this is the default type that comes when you generate the table API. If we were using this API across a range of applications, I'd recommend not changing this type, as if we were listing all of our inspections, for example, in a different application, we'd probably want that response to come through as an array, and we'd already set up our application to handle an array. We can look at the Where Used tab here, and we can see where we are using this whole API, so the whole inspections API. And of course, we're using it in both of our app2s, so when we assign equipment to a worker, we'll be posting via this API. Within the field worker inspection portal, we'll also be posting to the table. And now here we can see our inspection get method within our embedded app. Since we're only using the get method here, we can change the operation response body type to be an object, and this should fix the problem. So if we save, display, and we refresh again. So now if we jump back into our workflow inbox and we open up our workflow item here, we can see all of that data is now showing correctly, and that's because we have just a single object in our response. There is another way of handling this though. If we did have this API set up and we were using it in a number of different places and we were relying on this 200 get response to always be an array, we can of course create another identical API and just use the copy within our embedded app and set the response body to be of a type object there. But if we keep this one API and we keep it as an array, I can show you one other way of handling the data. And so what we'd use here is some temporary storage. So we'd use our model array, and instead of sending the data from our API straight to the simple form, where it's going to send that array into the form and it's not going to work, let's send the response to this model. So O model array. And then within the Ajax success, where we already are here, we can comment out this line as it's now going to not return anything, as we're not sending anything to the simple form just yet. And instead, let's set up a variable, we'll call it data, and this will be our model of our O model array dot get data. So now we're going to take the data from our response, which is stored in this model array, and store it in this variable. Now if we console log this data, specifically logging the data 0, we should see what we've achieved. So if we refresh the launchpad and we look again here, now we can see that object is printing all by itself. And that's simply because we've selected the first part of the array, position 0, within our variable, which obviously is just the full array response from our API. So then it's as simple as saying model oSimpleForm dot set data, and we can of course pass in just the first part of our data array. So this works as well. We should now see the data come through in exactly the same way as if we had changed the API definition. Perfect. So next, let's handle these base 64 strings, which obviously don't look very good in their standard format. And the best way of going about this is to use a carousel. So let's place a carousel underneath our comments. And within our carousel, we're actually going to put 2 pages. So one page will be for our attachment, which is going to be the picture, and then another one will be for the signature. And within each page, we can place a image component. And then all we need to do is take the binding. So here we'll take the attachment binding, and we'll copy and paste it into the source of our image. Since it's just a base64 source, we can paste that straight in, and we'll do exactly the same for the signature. So here we can set the source to use our signature binding. Let's disable these components so we don't need them anymore. Now if we save and refresh, we open up the workflow inbox, we'll have this carousel here. We do need to handle how this is being presented though. Now we must remember that a simple form works in pairs. So this is a pair of components, this is a pair, and this carousel actually thinks it's part of this other pair at the moment. So let's just re-enable one of our text components. We can just keep it as attachments for now. And now we have 3 pairs, with the third pair being these 2 components. So let's refresh one more time. Jump back in. And now we can see our attachments come through here. The issue is that we can't see what's inside of our carousel currently. So to fix this, let's just give our carousel a height. Let's set it to 300 pixels, for example. And then within each of our pages, let's set our image components to take 100% of this height. So if we save, activate and refresh, let's have a look at our changes. And now we can see the 2 pages with the image components inside. So now this makes a lot more sense when an admin is reviewing the inspection. They can see the equipment barcode that was scanned, they can see the comments that were made, and of course they can see the picture that was taken and the signature that was captured to sign off the inspection. So now this is all in place, let's test the approval and rejection logic. Let's start with the reject flow. So to get ready for this, let's just open the workflow overview tool, where we'll be able to see what happens to our pending workflow item once we reject it here. So we can see the workflow has successfully rejected. If we come back in here and we update, we'll see we have one cancelled workflow, and that makes sense because our rejected pathway hits the cancelled event. So here we can of course jump in, have a look at the log, and we can see that after rejecting, we started the script task inspection rejected, that was completed, and then finally the workflow was marked as cancelled. So let's jump back into our table here, and if we update our table, now we can see the result of our script. If we sort by part number, we can see these 2 wind turbine entries. We can see one has now been marked as rejected, and this contains all of our inspection data. And we have a new inspection which has been assigned for the same field worker, but with no inspection data. So now within our field worker inspection portal, we'll see our status of our original inspection is rejected, and we can see our new inspection has been generated and is visible here. So at this point, before we test the approved flow, let's fix a couple of small issues with our application. First of all, we haven't bound to the text here under our status icon. We can see it just says status, 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 and it'll be good if this said rejected and assigned. So let's jump back into our app designer. We can put our embedded app into display mode as we've finished here, and let's just open up our field worker inspection portal. If we jump into our tab submitted preview, we can see here the text is still assigned to status. If we unlock the application, and instead here, let's bind to our script API response, and we'll bind to the inspection status. If I save and activate that, let's have a look again here within our inspection portal, and now we can see rejected, assigned. So that makes a bit more sense. Also now when we jump into here, we can see that our barcode icon tab is green. even though there's no data present, and we can see also we can't scan a barcode here, so we have a bit of a logic issue. Now since we're printing that data, within here we can see our inspection data, and for our barcode scan it's an empty string. So let's have a look at the logic here. We know that when we get the inspections, we're sending the data to the, when we click on the generic tile, we'll be calling the press event, which is calling our populate inspection job page data function. And then obviously we perform all our checks here. So let's come down to the barcode check and have a look to see what might be wrong. And this appears to be the issue, is that we've just included the word inspections here twice. So let's just remove one of these, and that should fix the problem. If we save, activate, refresh again, open up the inspection portal, now our barcode logic is behaving correctly. So let's jump back into the table browser here, and let's just copy and paste our data from our rejected inspection into our assigned inspection to complete everything essentially automatically. If we come back and we refresh, in fact it refreshes automatically, we can see all of that data has now been populated. Our signature logic, again here, there appears to be a bit of a logic error. It's not detecting the signature. We actually have an error in the console. That inspection's signature is not defined. So we can click on that here. We can see we're trying to set the source to inspection signature. And that's a simple one to fix, as we've just missed saying data dot. So we were trying to reference it without pointing to our data variable where all of the data is being passed in. So let's come back to the launch pad, open up that inspection one more time. We can see one more issue, tab sign view is not defined, and that's a simple one as well, just missing the I. Save, activate, refresh. There we go, no errors, everything seems to look okay here. Should be able to submit this inspection again. There we have it, nice submitted inspection. Come back to the workflow overview. We can see one workflow item in our inbox. As an administrator, we'll now have that assigned to us. So within our workflow inbox here, we have our one inspection to review. We can see all of that data again, no problem. And now let's approve the inspection. So it has been successfully approved. If we come back and we look here, we update, we can see now we have one completed and one cancelled inspection. And then finally, we can check within our fieldwork inspection portal. If we refresh here, we now have 2 complete inspections. So we actually have one more logic error to do with our script, as our script has changed both of these items to be complete, when of course only one of them should say rejected still, and only one of them should say complete. So let's have a look at our logic here on our inspection approved. It's as simple as here within our inspections table, where we're setting the status to complete, we're setting it for the part number. However, we're not saying only set it for the part number and where the status is submitted. So let's just take that line, our and where, we can copy it, jump back into edit mode here, paste that in, put it back into display mode, and then the easiest way to test this will be to go into the table browser, we go into edit mode, change one of our inspections. If we update actually first here, we should see both now marked as complete. Let's just set one back to assigned and the other to rejected. save and display. If we refresh here, we're back to where we were before with one rejected inspection and one assigned. We can submit that. That will mark it as submitted, and I'll create our workflow. Let's approve the workflow. Jump back into our fieldworker inspection. Now, as you can see, both of these inspections have had their status changed to complete. So this is a bit of a logic error that we need to sort out. So let's investigate what could be going wrong here. So the best way of reproducing the scenario is to simply change these values in the table itself. So if we update, we can see that both have been marked as completed. Let's change one record back to assigned and the other to rejected. Now back within our application, we're back to this step here, so we can resubmit. And here we can start to see the root of the problem. This has also changed our rejected inspection to submitted as well. So that is part of our logic here in our submit button. We go and run the submit inspection function, which changes here the inspection data where the part number is equal to our object attribute part number. But we'll also want to add in a comma here, and we'll want to make it so we only change it where the status is assigned. So with that change made, let's go back into the database and update here. Let's change one of these back to assigned and another to rejected again. And remember, that's a status with a lowercase s. When you're referring to a property name, you need to ensure that it matches exactly to the name of the property here. So with that change made, we can save, activate. Let's come back to our launchpad and refresh to get that new code in. We can see we have a couple of workflow items from our testing lingering about here. So let's go into the workflow overview tool and just delete those that we don't need. So we can simply select them and hit the delete button here. And now let's go into our assigned inspection. Let's submit it. And now here we can see that this one has stayed as rejected and only this one has updated to submitted. So now here we should be able to see that workflow inbox item, and of course within our workflow inbox here we'll see the inspection. We can approve it. Let's go back to our field worker inspection portal, and on a refresh now we can see that we still have our rejected inspection, but we also have a complete inspection now as well. The final thing to check will be if we go back into our view and edit equipment app, we should see for our wind turbine, which is the piece of equipment that we've been working with this whole time, the 134, it is no longer assigned as well. So the workflow server script is also setting this to not be assigned to a field worker anymore once the workflow has been approved. And so that's it. We now have a full end-to-end functional set of applications to add, view, edit, and assign equipment, to complete an inspection, and to approve and reject the inspections as well. In the next video, James will run you through some of the analytical functionalities available within the platform as well.